Hello, everyone. Tonight, we're standing in a spotless suburban kitchen with a black mother in her early 60s, twisting her old wedding ring while her banker daughter rushes around grabbing car keys and coffee. Right now, the clock over the stove is blinking 7:12 a.m. Toast is burning in the background, and what sounds like a simple request for a borrowed $100 is about to rip open everything they both pretend is fine. In a moment, you'll walk with her from that cold granite countertop to a bank lobby full of marble and whispers, watching the same daughter who called her a leech stare at a computer screen that shows more zeros than she's ever handled in her life. You'll sit with this mother at her tiny new kitchen table months later, in a small apartment that finally feels like hers, as she realizes the sweetest revenge is not screaming or suing, but waking up peaceful in a life she chose for herself. If you've ever been talked down to by your own child, or made to feel like a burden in a house you helped build, this story might land so close to your own ribcage that you might not emotionally survive it. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, drop your city and your local time in the comments. I love seeing where you're listening from and how our little nighttime circle stretches across the map. Now, turn off the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for a gentle hush of noise. And let's begin our journey together tonight. I decided to test my banker daughter by asking to borrow $100. She replied, "You already live here for free. If you want money, go get a job. You leech." The next day, I went back to the bank to transfer. I never thought a simple question would shatter my world so completely. At 62, after burying my husband 3 years ago and rebuilding my life around my only daughter, I found myself standing in Monique's pristine kitchen, my heart pounding as I prepared to ask for something I'd never asked for before. "Monique, honey," I called softly as she rushed around the kitchen, her bank uniform perfectly pressed, her blonde hair swept into that severe bun she always wore to work. She barely glanced at me as she grabbed her coffee mug and car keys. "What? Mom, I'm running late." Her tone was already impatient, the same tone she'd used with me more and more frequently since I'd moved in after Charles's funeral. I twisted my wedding ring, a habit I'd developed whenever I felt nervous. I was wondering if I could borrow $100 just until my Social Security check comes in next week. The coffee mug froze halfway to her lips. Monique slowly turned to face me, her green eyes narrowing in a way that made my stomach clench with dread. The silence stretched between us like a taut wire, ready to snap. "Are you serious right now?" Her voice was low, dangerous in a way I'd never heard before. I nodded, my throat suddenly dry. "It's just that Mrs. Peterson next door mentioned there's a lovely little craft fair this weekend, and I thought maybe a craft fair." Monique's laugh was sharp, cutting. "You want me to give you money for a craft fair?" The way she said it made me feel small, foolish. I straightened my shoulders, trying to maintain some dignity. "It's not just for the fair. I might need a few groceries. And Mom, let me stop you right there." Monique set her mug down with a sharp clink, crossing her arms over her chest. "You already live here, Rentry. Free food, free utilities, free everything. And now you want cash, too." Each word hit me like a physical blow. I felt my face flush with embarrassment and confusion. This wasn't the daughter I'd raised, the little girl I'd stayed up all night with when she had fevers. the teenager I'd worked double shifts to put through college. I just thought, since you work at the bank and you're doing so well, if you want money, go get a job. Her voice rose, and I could see the neighbor's curtains twitching across the street. You're 62, not 92. There's nothing stopping you from working except your own laziness. The word laziness struck me like a slap. I thought of all the years I'd worked as a seamstress, the calluses on my fingers from countless hours at the sewing machine to provide for her. I thought of the nights I'd gone without dinner so she could have new school clothes, the dreams I'd deferred so she could chase hers. Monique, please, I've never asked you for anything before, and that's exactly why this is so ridiculous. She snapped, grabbing her purse and slinging it over her shoulder with violent force. You think because you're my mother, you're entitled to my hard-earned money? I work 40 hours a week at that bank, dealing with people's financial problems all day. The last thing I need is to come home to my own mother acting like some kind of sanguga. The Spanish word she used hit me harder than anything else. Bloodsucker. She'd called me a bloodsucker. My own daughter, the child I'd sacrificed everything for, saw me as a parasite feeding off her success. I stood there in her kitchen, surrounded by the expensive appliances I'd helped her buy with my savings after Charles died, feeling smaller than I'd ever felt in my life. My hands shook as I gripped the edge of the granite countertop. Charles and I had dreamed of having in our own home, but never could afford. I see, I whispered, barely able to get the words out past the lump in my throat. Monique's expression didn't soften. If anything, she looked more annoyed, as if my emotional reaction was just another inconvenience in her busy morning. Look, I'm sorry if that sounded harsh, but someone needs to give you a reality check. She checked her watch impatiently. You can't just coast through life expecting other people to take care of you. I have my own bills, my own responsibilities. Maybe it's time you figured out how to take care of yourself for once. She breezed past me toward the door, leaving behind the faint scent of her expensive perfume and the devastating echo of her words. I heard the front door slam, then the sound of her car backing out of the driveway. I stood alone in that kitchen, tears streaming down my cheeks, feeling like I'd been gutted. The woman who had just walked out wasn't the daughter I'd raised. She was a stranger wearing Monique's face, speaking with Monique's voice, but with a heart I didn't recognize. As I slowly made my way upstairs to my small bedroom in what used to be her childhood playroom, I caught sight of myself in the hallway mirror. I looked old, not just older, but worn down, defeated. When had I become this person? When had I become someone my own child could dismiss so casually? I sat on the edge of my narrow bed, surrounded by the few belongings I'd brought from the home Charles and I had shared for 38 years. A photograph of our wedding day sat on the nightstand, his warm smile a stark contrast to the coldness I just experienced downstairs. Oh, Charles, I whispered to his picture. What would you think of her now? But even as the tears fell, something else was stirring in my chest. Something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Something that might have been anger or determination, or perhaps both. Monique thought she knew everything about her mother's situation. She thought she understood exactly who was dependent on whom in this relationship. But there were things about her father's life, about our marriage, about the choices we'd made that she had never known. Things that would change everything if she ever discovered the truth. I wiped my tears and reached for my purse. It was time to make a phone call I'd been putting off for far too long. Tomorrow, I would go to the bank where my daughter worked. And for the first time in 3 years, Monique would see her mother in a completely different light. That night, I sat at Monique's dining room table with Charles's old leather briefcase spread open before me. Inside were documents I hadn't looked at since his funeral, papers that contained secrets I'd kept even from my own daughter. My hands trembled as I pulled out the investment portfolios, the property deeds, and the letter Charles had written to me before he died. The letter was worn from my handling it during those first grief-stricken months, and his familiar handwriting brought fresh tears to my eyes. My dearest Laverne, it began. If you're reading this, then I'm gone, and you're probably wondering what to do with everything I've left behind. I know we lived simply, but that was by choice. I wanted you to have security without the burden of managing wealth while I was alive. Now it's all yours. But please, don't let money change who you are. Use it wisely, and remember that the most important things in life can't be bought. The everything he referred to was staggering. $260 million accumulated through decades of careful investments, real estate holdings, and a tech company he'd helped start in the early days of Silicon Valley. We'd lived modestly in our small house, driving used cars and clipping coupons, not because we had to, but because Charles believed in living below our means. The true test of character, he used to say, is how people treat you when they think you have nothing to offer them. After his death, I'd been overwhelmed by grief and the complexity of managing such wealth. I'd left everything in the hands of our longtime financial advisor, Mr. Clayton, taking only what I needed to live comfortably. But comfortable to meant the same simple lifestyle Charles and I had always shared. I'd never told Monique about the money because I wanted to see who she really was, how she would treat her mother without the influence of wealth. Now I had my answer, and it broke my heart. I picked up my phone and dialed Mr. Clayton's private number. Despite the late hour, he answered immediately. Mrs. Carter, how are you holding up? Hello, Albert. I need to make some arrangements tomorrow. Large transfers. There was a pause. Of course. How much are we talking about? All of it. I want to liquidate the major holdings and transfer the funds. I'll explain everything when I see you. Laverne, are you sure about this? That's a substantial amount of money to move at once. Is everything all right? I thought about Monique's words, her contempt, the way she'd looked at me like I was nothing more than a burden. Everything is exactly as it should be. Albert, can you meet me at First National tomorrow morning around 10? Hazrul. First National? Isn't that where your daughter works? Yes, it is. He was quiet for a moment, and I could practically hear him putting the pieces together. Albert had known our family for 20 years. He'd watched Monique grow up, had seen how she'd changed over the years. I understand. I'll bring all the necessary paperwork. Are you sure you want to do this there? I'm absolutely certain. After I hung up, I sat in the silence of Monique's house, listening to the hum of her expensive appliances and the tick of the grandfather clock she'd bought with her first bonus from the bank. Everything around me spoke of her success, her independence, her complete confidence in her own superiority. But tomorrow, that confidence would crumble. I thought back to when she was 7 years old, crying because a boy at school had called her stupid. I'd held her close and told her that people's words could only hurt us if we believed them. You know who you are, I'd whispered into her hair. Don't let anyone else define you. Now at 35, she'd forgotten that lesson entirely. She'd become the kind of person who defined others by what they could provide her. who measured worth in dollars and status. She'd looked at her own mother and seen only a burden, a senguga, because she thought I had nothing of value to offer. I gathered up Charles's papers and locked them back in the briefcase. Tomorrow, Monique would discover that the woman she'd dismissed so cruelly, the mother she'd called lazy and entitled, was worth more money than she could ever dream of earning in her lifetime. But more importantly, she would learn something about the true cost of her cruelty. I went to bed that night with a strange sense of calm. For 3 years, I'd been adrift, unsure of my place in the world without Charles beside me. I'd let Monique take the lead in our relationship because I'd been too grief-stricken and lost to assert myself. I'd accepted her increasing coldness and impatience as the natural strain of having her widowed mother living in her space. But her words today had awakened something in me that I'd thought died with Charles. My spine, my sense of self-worth, my understanding of who I really was beneath the grief and uncertainty. I wasn't the pathetic, dependent woman Monique saw when she looked at me. I was Laverne Carter, the wife of a brilliant man who had trusted me with his legacy, the mother who had sacrificed for her child without ever expecting gratitude, the woman who had the strength to walk away from her entire life and start over if necessary. Tomorrow, at 10 sharp, I would walk into First National Bank where my daughter worked. I would stand at her window, look her in the eye, and show her exactly who her mother really was. The woman she'd called a bloodsucker would reveal herself to be worth more than the entire net worth of every person in that building combined. But even as I planned my moment of revelation, I felt a deep sadness settling in my chest. Because I knew that once this was over, once Monique saw the truth, our relationship would never be the same. The daughter who had spoken to me with such contempt would try to transform herself back into the loving child she used to be. But it would all be a lie. I closed my eyes and whispered a prayer for strength. Tomorrow would change everything, and there would be no going back. At exactly 10 years, I walked through the heavy glass doors of First National Bank, wearing my best navy dress and carrying Charles's leather briefcase. My heart was steady, my mind clear. Behind the teller counter, I could see Monique helping an elderly man with his deposit, her professional smile firmly in place. Mr. Clayton was waiting for me near the private banking offices, a tall stack of documents in his hands. His gray hair was perfectly combed, his suit impeccable as always, but I could see concern in his eyes. Laverne, I have to ask one more time. Are you absolutely certain about this? I looked across the lobby at my daughter, who still hadn't noticed my presence. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Albert. He nodded solemnly and led me to a private office where we could conduct our business. The transfer took nearly 2 hours. Account after account, investment after investment, all liquidated and consolidated into a single transaction that would forever change how the world saw me. When we finished, Mr. Clayton gathered his papers and shook my hand. The funds have been transferred as requested. $260 million minus taxes and fees. Are you sure you don't want to reconsider the destination? I'm sure. Thank you, Albert, for everything. He left through a side exit, and I walked back into the main lobby, my steps deliberate and calm. Monique was just finishing with another customer when she looked up and saw me approaching her window. Her face immediately tightened with annoyance. Mom, what are you doing here? I told you I can't help you with money. I'm not here to ask for money. Sweetheart, I said quietly, setting my briefcase on the counter. I'm here to make a transaction. She rolled her eyes. What kind of transaction? Your Social Security direct deposit is already set up. I slid a withdrawal slip across the counter, filled out in my careful handwriting. Monique glanced at it dismissively, then did a double take. Her face went pale as she read the amount again. Mom, this can't be right. You wrote down $260 million. That's correct. Her hands were shaking as she looked at the slip again. This is some kind of joke, right? You can't withdraw money you don't have. Check the account. Monique. She turned to her computer terminal, her fingers fumbling as she typed in my account number. I watched her face change as the screen loaded. Watched her eyes grow wide with disbelief. This can't be real, she whispered, staring at the screen. This says you have 264,700,000 and change. I finished calmly. Your father was a very successful investor. We just chose to live simply. The color drained completely from Monique's face. She looked at me, then at the screen, then back at me. You're a millionaire. The money has already been transferred. The account is now empty except for what I need to live modestly. Transferred. Transferred where? Her voice was rising, causing other customers to look in our direction. That's not your concern, dear. I just wanted you to know that the woman you called a sanguisuga yesterday had more money than you'll ever see in your lifetime. I picked up my briefcase and turned to walk away. But Monique's voice stopped me. Mom, wait. Please wait. I turned back to see her frantically trying to signal her supervisor. Within moments, she was rushing around the counter toward me, her professional composure completely shattered. Mom, I think there's been some mistake. You can't just give away that much money. It's not safe. You could be taken advantage of. The irony of her words wasn't lost on me. Like, you took advantage of me. I didn't know. She was stammering now, reaching for my arm. Please, we need to talk about this. You can't make financial decisions like this when you're upset. I'm not upset. Monique, I'm finally thinking clearly. But the money? Where did you send it? Was it a scam? There are so many people who target elderly people with their life savings. I almost laughed at that. She was so desperate to believe that I'd been conned rather than accept that I had willingly given away a fortune she'd never known existed. The money is exactly where I want it to be, I said firmly. Bye now. Several bank employees and customers were staring at us. Monique's supervisor, a middle-aged man in an expensive suit, approached with concern written across his face. Is everything all right here, Mrs. Hartwell? My mother just transferred out over $200 million, Monique said frantically. I think she might have been scammed, or maybe she's not thinking clearly because of her age. The supervisor's eyebrows shot up. He looked at me with new interest, the kind of attention reserved for the ultra-wealthy. Mrs. Carter, I'm Victor Hall, the branch manager. Would you like to speak privately about your transaction? The transaction is complete and exactly as I intended, I said calmly. I'm perfectly competent and was not coerced or deceived by anyone. Monique grabbed my arm more forcefully. Mom, please, Let's go home and talk about this. I'm sure we can reverse the transfer if we act quickly. I looked down at her hand on my arm, then met her eyes. For the first time in 3 years, I saw real emotion there, but it wasn't love or concern for my welfare. It was panic at the realization that a fortune had slipped through her fingers. Monique, yesterday, you told me to get a job if I wanted money. You called me lazy and entitled. You made it clear that I was nothing but a burden to you. I didn't mean it like that, she said quickly, her voice desperate. I was just stressed from work, and I spoke without thinking. You know I love you. Do I? I asked quietly. Because yesterday, you looked me in the eye and called me a bloodsucker for asking for $100. Today, you're panicking because you found out I had access to millions. Tears were starting to form in her eyes, but they looked more like tears of frustration than genuine remorse. Mom, I was having a bad day. I say things I don't mean when I'm stressed. You know how I get? Yes, I do know how you get. That's exactly the problem. I gently but firmly removed her hand from my arm. I need to go home and pack my things. I'll be moving out by the end of the week. Moving out. Where are you going, Mom? Please. We can work this out. I'll take some time off and we can talk through everything. But I was already walking toward the exit. Behind me, I could hear her calling my name, her voice echoing through the marble lobby of the bank where she'd worked for 8 years, where she'd built her reputation as a competent professional. Now, her co-workers and customers had witnessed her desperately chasing after her elderly mother, begging about money that was already gone. As I reached my car, I saw her burst through the bank doors, still in her work clothes, her hair coming loose from its severe bun. Mom, please don't do this. We can fix this. I can fix this. I started my engine and rolled down the window. There's nothing to fix, Monique. This is exactly how it should be. As I drove away, I watched her in my rearview mirror, standing in the bank parking lot in her wrinkled uniform, looking lost and desperate. For just a moment, I almost felt sorry for her. But then I remembered her voice yesterday. If you want money, go get a job. Sanguga. The daughter who had spoken those words was about to learn that actions have consequences and cruelty always comes with a price. I wasn't even halfway home when my phone started ringing. Monique's name flashed on the screen again and again, but I let each call go to voicemail. When I finally pulled into the driveway, her car was already there, and she was pacing frantically on the front porch. The moment she saw me, she ran to my car door. Mom, thank God I left work early. We need to talk about what happened today. I stepped out slowly, noting how different she looked already. The confident banker who had dismissed me yesterday was gone, replaced by someone anxious and desperate. Her makeup was smeared from crying, and her hands shook as she reached for my arm. Sweetheart, I've been thinking about everything you said at the bank, she began, her voice artificially sweet. I realize I may have been too harsh yesterday. I was stressed about a difficult client, and I took it out on you unfairly. I unlocked the front door without responding. She followed me inside, talking rapidly. I know you're upset with me, and you have every right to be, but giving away that much money when you're emotional? Mom, that's not like you. You've always been so practical, so careful with finances. I set my purse on the kitchen counter and turned to face her. You're right. I have always been careful with money. That's why your father and I were able to accumulate so much of it. Exactly, she said, seizing on what she thought was an opening. Dad would be heartbroken to see you just give away everything he worked so hard to build. He saved that money for you, for your security, for your future. I studied her face, searching for any trace of genuine remorse or love. All I saw was calculation and desperation, poorly disguised as concern. And what about yesterday? Monique, was I being emotional when you called me a bloodsucker for asking for one hunch? She flinched. I never used that word. Sauga. You called me a sanashuga. That's different. That's Spanish. It doesn't sound as harsh in Spanish. The audacity of her lie took my breath away. It means exactly the same thing, and you know it. You chose that word specifically because you thought it would hurt more. Mom, please, can we just focus on fixing the situation? I've already called the bank's fraud department. If you were coerced or pressured into making that transfer, we can report it and potentially recover the funds. I wasn't coerced by anyone except my own conscience. But $260 million? Mom, do you understand how much money that is? You could have lived like a queen for the rest of your life. We could have. I could have helped you enjoy it. There it was, the truth slipping out despite her attempts to hide it. This wasn't about my welfare or my security. This was about what she had lost before she even knew she could have had it. You could have helped me enjoy it, I repeated slowly. Like you helped me enjoy living in your house. Like you helped me feel valued and appreciated yesterday morning. Her face flushed. I was protecting you from becoming dependent. I thought if you learned to be more self-reliant. You thought I was a burden? You said so explicitly. I never said you were a burden. You said I lived here rent-free, that I was entitled, that I expected you to take care of me. You told me to get a job if I wanted money. Those aren't the words of someone who sees value in their mother. Hey, Monique began pacing the kitchen, running her hands through her hair. Okay, maybe I was harsh. Maybe I said things I shouldn't have said. But people say things they don't mean when they're frustrated. That doesn't mean you should just throw away a fortune. I didn't throw it away. I gave it to people who will use it to help others. People who understand the value of kindness and compassion. She stopped pacing and stared at me. You gave it to charity. All of it. Most of it. I kept enough to live independently and comfortably, but not extravagantly. How much is enough? She asked. And there was something predatory in her voice now. Enough that I don't need to live in your house anymore. That seemed to panic her more than anything else I'd said. You're moving out. Where would you go? You don't know anyone except me. I know plenty of people. Monique. I just haven't had the opportunity to nurture those relationships while I've been living under your roof, walking on eggshells, afraid to inconvenience you. She sat down heavily at the kitchen table, her head in her hands. This is insane. You're destroying our family over one stupid argument. This wasn't an argument, sweetheart. An argument implies that both people have valid points to make. What happened yesterday was you revealing how you truly feel about me. That's not true. Then tell me, Monique, tell me honestly. Before today, before you found out about the money, when was the last time you were genuinely happy to see me? When was the last time you asked about my day because you actually cared about the answer? When was the last time you hugged me or told me you loved me without it being a perfunctory response to me saying it first? The silence stretched between us. She opened her mouth several times as if to speak, then closed it again. I could see her struggling to find a memory that would prove me wrong, and the fact that she couldn't seem to shock her as much as it saddened me. "I'm not good at expressing emotions," she finally said. "You know that about me. I've always been more reserved. Reserved is one thing. Contemptuous is another. I was never contemptuous. Yesterday morning, you looked at me like I was something distasteful that had stuck to your shoe. You spoke to me the way you might speak to a panhandler who had followed you home. That wasn't reserved. Monique, that was cruel." Tears finally started flowing down her cheeks, but I could see the anger beneath them. "So, you decided to punish me by giving away my inheritance." "Your inheritance." I stood up slowly, feeling a cold fury building in my chest. "That money was never yours. It was your father's, and he left it to me. I had every right to do with it, whatever I chose. But I'm your daughter. I'm your only family." "And you made it very clear yesterday that you consider that relationship to be a burden rather than a blessing." She was crying harder now, but there was something ugly in her expression. "I can't believe you would do this to me after everything I've done for you. Letting you live here, taking care of you, taking care of me. Monique, I pay for my own food. I do my own laundry. I clean my own room. The only thing you've provided is a roof over my head. And yesterday, you made it clear that you resent even that small kindness." "Fine," she exploded, her mask finally slipping completely. Maybe I did resent it. Maybe I was tired of having my mother hovering around my house like some kind of ghost, reminding me every day that I'm not married, that I don't have children of my own, that I'm 35 years old, and my biggest accomplishment is managing other people's money at a small town bank. The truth, raw and ugly, hung between us. This wasn't about the $100 or even about the millions. This was about years of resentment and disappointment that she'd been hiding behind a thin veneer of beautiful daughter behavior. "At least now you're being honest," I said quietly. "Don't you dare act superior to me," she snapped. "You sit around this house all day doing nothing while I work 40 hours a week to keep us both afloat. And now I find out you could have been helping all along, but instead, you let me struggle with the mortgage and the bills and the stress of supporting both of us. I never asked you to support me." "You didn't have to ask. What choice did I have?" My widowed mother shows up at my door with nothing but a suitcase and a small life insurance payout. What was I supposed to do? Turn you away? The cruelty of her words hit me like physical blows. But they also clarified everything. She hadn't taken me in out of love or duty. She'd done it because she felt trapped by social expectations, and she'd resented every moment of it. "You're right," I said calmly. "You shouldn't have felt obligated to take me in, and you don't have to feel obligated anymore." I walked to the stairs, leaving her sitting at the kitchen table with tears streaming down her face. But as I reached the first step, I heard her voice, smaller now, almost childlike. "Mom, what happens now?" I turned back to look at my daughter, this stranger who wore my child's face but had a heart I didn't recognize. "Now you get exactly what you wanted, sweetheart. You get your life back, free from the burden of taking care of your mother." I spent the next 3 days quietly packing my belongings, while Monique alternated between ignoring me completely and launching into elaborate speeches about family forgiveness and second chances. She'd transformed overnight into the devoted daughter she'd never actually been, bringing me coffee in the morning, offering to help with my packing, even suggesting we take a trip together to work through our issues. Meh. It was painful to watch, knowing that every gesture was calculated, every kindness motivated by the hope that she could somehow convince me to reverse the financial decision that had cost her a fortune she'd never even known existed. On Thursday evening, as I folded Charles's old sweaters into my suitcase, Monique knocked on my bedroom door. "Mom, can we talk?" She'd been crying again. Her eyes were red and puffy, and she clutched a tissue in her hand like a prop in a performance. "I've been doing a lot of thinking since Tuesday," she began, sitting on the edge of my bed without being invited. "I realize I haven't been the daughter you deserved. I got so caught up in my own problems, my own stress, that I forgot what's really important." I continued packing, not trusting myself to speak. "I know you're angry with me, and I understand why. But Mom, we're all we have. You and me. Dad's gone, and we only have each other. Doesn't that count for something?" The manipulation was so transparent. It made me sick. She was using Charles's death, using our shared grief as a tool to guilt me into forgiveness. "You should have thought about that before you called me a bloodsucker," I said quietly, not looking up from my suitcase. "I've apologized for that 100 times. How many times do I have to say I'm sorry before you'll forgive me?" I finally looked at her. "It's not about the apology, Monique. It's about the fact that you only started apologizing after you found out about the money. That's not true, isn't it? If I had been broke like you thought, would you be in here right now begging for my forgiveness? Or would you be relieved that I was finally moving out?" She opened her mouth to protest, then closed it again. The silence was answer enough. "I thought so," I said, returning to my packing. "Okay, fine," she said, her voice hardening. "Maybe I wouldn't have apologized right away. Maybe I would have needed time to cool down and realize I was wrong. But I would have come around eventually. I always do. Do you? When was the last time you apologized to me for anything? When was the last time you admitted you were wrong about something that mattered?" Again. Silence. "The truth is, Monique, you've never had to apologize to me because I've always been the one making excuses for your behavior. When you were rude, I told myself you were just tired from work. When you were dismissive, I convinced myself you were under stress. When you treated me like an inconvenience, I found ways to justify it because I didn't want to face the truth about who you'd become." She stood up abruptly, pacing to the window. "And what truth is that? That I'm some kind of monster, that I don't love my own mother? I think you love the idea of me. You love having a mother who exists in the background of your life, who doesn't make demands or cause problems, who's grateful for whatever scraps of attention you throw my way. But you don't love me as an actual person with needs and feelings and dignity. That's not fair, isn't it? Yesterday, you told me I was destroying our family over one stupid argument. You still don't understand that this was never about one argument. This was about a lifetime of feeling like I don't matter to you." Monique turned from the window, tears streaming down her face again. "You matter to me. You're my mother. Ike. Then why did you speak to me the way you did? Why did you look at me with such contempt when I asked for help? Because I was angry. Because I felt like you weren't trying hard enough to be independent. Because I was tired of feeling responsible for someone else's happiness. There it was again, the truth slipping out. Despite her attempts to hide it, she was tired of feeling responsible for me. Not tired of caring for me or helping me, but tired of the obligation itself. I never asked you to be responsible for my happiness. Monique, I asked you for $100. It wasn't about the money, and you know it. You're right. It wasn't about the money. It was about the fact that you saw your mother asking for help as an insult to your independence. She sank back down onto the bed, her head in her hands. I don't know how to do this. Mom, I don't know how to be the daughter you want me to be. For just a moment, I felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this was it. Maybe this was the breakthrough we needed. But then she looked up at me with desperate eyes and said, "Can't we just go back to the way things were before? I'll try harder. I promise. I'll be more patient, more understanding. We can start over." And I realized she still didn't understand. She thought this was about her behavior, about learning to be nicer to me. She didn't understand that the problem wasn't her manners or her patience. The problem was that she fundamentally didn't value me as a person. The way things were before wasn't working. Sweetheart, I was miserable and you were resentful. That's not a family. That's just two people sharing a house. But we can fix it. I know we can. How? By you pretending to care about me because you feel guilty. By me pretending not to notice that your kindness is motivated by regret rather than love. She was quiet for a long moment, then asked in a small voice, "Where will you go? I've rented a small apartment across town. Nothing fancy, but it's clean and comfortable, and it's mine." An apartment, Mom. You hate apartment living. You've always said you needed a yard, space to breathe. I've changed my mind about a lot of things lately. What about your furniture? Your things from the old house? I'll take what I need. The rest can stay in storage. She was panicking again. I could see it in her eyes. Mom, please don't do this. I know I messed up, but we can work through it. Families work through things. Some families do, but some families are too broken to fix. We're not broken, aren't we? Monique. 3 days ago, you called me a parasite. Today, you're telling me you love me and can't live without me. Which version is the real you? Both, she said desperately. People are complicated. Mom, I can love you and still get frustrated with you sometimes. That's normal. Getting frustrated is normal. Cruelty isn't. She stared at me for a long moment, and I could see her mind working, trying to find the right words to change my mind. Finally, she played her last card. What about Dad? What would he think about you tearing our family apart like this? The question hit exactly where she'd intended it to, but not in the way she'd hoped. Instead of feeling guilty, I felt a surge of clarity. Your father would be heartbroken, I said quietly. Not because I'm leaving, but because of who you've become. He loved you so much. Monique, he was so proud of you. But he also taught you to be kind, to be generous, to value people over money. Somewhere along the way, you forgot those lessons. I didn't forget them. Then tell me honestly, if you met me today as a stranger, if I were just some older woman in your bank asking for help, how would you treat me? She opened her mouth to answer, then stopped. I could see the realization dawning on her face. She would treat a stranger with more courtesy and respect than she'd shown her own mother. I would be professional, she finally whispered. Professional, not kind, not compassionate. Professional, that's my job. That's how I'm supposed to act at work. And how are you supposed to act with your mother? The question hung in the air between us. She had no answer because she'd never really thought about it. In her mind, I was just supposed to accept whatever treatment she gave me because I was her mother, because family was supposed to love unconditionally. But love without respect isn't love at all. It's just obligation dressed up in prettier words. I'm sorry. Monique, I said, closing my suitcase. But I'm done being taken for granted. I'm done accepting scraps of affection. I'm done making excuses for behavior that would be unacceptable from anyone else in my life. She watched me carry my suitcase to the door, her face crumpling with the realization that her words had finally failed her. For the first time in her adult life, she couldn't manipulate her way out of the consequences of her actions. Mom, please don't leave like this. Don't let it end like this. I stopped in the doorway and looked back at her one last time. It doesn't have to end like this, sweetheart, but it can't continue the way it was. 6 months later, I stood in the kitchen of my small apartment, humming while I prepared dinner for 3. The space was modest, nothing like Monique's impressive house, but it was filled with warmth and laughter in a way her home never had been. My new neighbors, Darlene and Otis, were coming over for our weekly dinner together. They were a retired couple who had moved into the unit next to mine just after I'd settled in. What had started as polite hallway conversations had blossomed into a genuine friendship that fed my soul in ways I hadn't experienced in years. Laverne, something smells wonderful, Darlene called out as she and Otis let themselves in with the key I'd given them months ago. Just my mother's pot roast recipe, I said, giving them each a warm hug. Though I think I finally got the seasoning right. Otis, a former mechanic with gentle hands and a quick wit, settled into what had become his usual chair at my small dining table. Better than last week, because that was already perfect. You're both terrible flatterers. I laughed, but I felt genuinely happy. These people saw me, valued me, enjoyed my company without any ulterior motives. They were what family should be. As we shared dinner, Darlene mentioned seeing Monique at the grocery store earlier in the week. She looked tired, Darlene said carefully. We talked about my situation a few times, and both she and Otis understood the complicated nature of my relationship with my daughter. She asked about you. What did she want to know? Just if you were doing well? If you seemed happy? I told her you were thriving. Otis nodded. That girl still doesn't understand what she lost. Does she? I sighed, setting down my fork. I don't think she ever will. In her mind, I'm the one who chose money over family. She can't see that I chose dignity over abuse. The truth was, Monique had tried to contact me several times over the past 6 months. At first, the calls and messages were angry, accusatory. She blamed me for ruining her life, for embarrassing her at work, for abandoning my responsibilities as her mother. When that approach failed, she switched to guilt, sending me old photos of us together, leaving voicemails where she cried about how much she missed me. But she never once acknowledged what she had done wrong. She never showed any understanding of why her words had hurt so much. In her mind, she was the victim of my unreasonable expectations and sudden financial decisions. "Have you considered reaching out to her?" Darlene asked gently. I had considered it. There were lonely nights when I missed the daughter she used to be. When I remembered the little girl who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms and tell me I was the best mommy in the world. But that child was gone, replaced by a woman who saw relationships as transactions and kindness as weakness. "I've thought about it," I admitted, "but I know how it would go." She would apologize for the specific words she used, promise to be more careful about her tone, maybe even cry a few tears. But she wouldn't change. Not really. And I would end up right back where I started, walking on eggshells in my own daughter's life. Otis reached across the table and patted my hand. "You did the right thing, Laverne. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for someone is to show them there are consequences for their actions." After Darlene and Otis left, I sat on my small balcony with a cup of tea, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. My phone rang, and I glanced at the screen to see Monique's name. For a moment, I considered answering, but then I remembered her voice calling me a bloodsucker. The contempt in her eyes when she looked at me, the way she had treated my pain as an inconvenience. I let the call go to voicemail. 20 minutes later, I played the message. "Mom, it's me. I know you probably won't call back, but I wanted you to know that I've been thinking about what happened between us. I've been seeing a therapist, trying to understand why I said those things to you. She says, I have issues with boundaries and emotional expression." I almost smiled at that. Even in therapy, Monique was finding ways to make herself the victim of circumstances rather than taking responsibility for her choices. "I know you're angry with me, and maybe you have good reasons to be. But Mom, I miss you. I miss having you in my life, even if I wasn't very good at showing it. Could we maybe meet for coffee sometime just to talk?" I deleted the message without replying. It wasn't anger that kept me from responding. It was self-preservation. I had learned finally that I deserved to be around people who brought out the best in me, not people who made me feel small and unwanted. The next morning, I drove to the cemetery where Charles was buried. I did this every few weeks, not because I believed he could hear me, but because sitting by his grave helped me organize my thoughts. "I gave most of your money away," I told his headstone, arranging the fresh flowers I'd brought to children's hospitals and homeless shelters mostly. "I kept enough to live comfortably, but not extravagantly, just like you would have wanted." The wind rustled through the oak tree above his grave, and I imagined it was his approval. Monique is struggling with what happened. She keeps calling, trying to find a way back into my good graces. But Charles, she doesn't understand that it was never about the money. It was about respect. It was about being valued as a human being, rather than tolerated as an obligation. I sat quietly for a while, remembering our life together, the simple joy we'd found in each other's company. Charles had seen me, truly seen me, in a way Monique never had. He'd valued my opinions, appreciated my contributions to our partnership, made me feel like I mattered. "I'm happy now," I said finally, "for the first time since you died." I wake up in the morning feeling grateful for the day ahead instead of dreading it. I have friends who laugh at my jokes and actually listen when I talk. I volunteer at the Literacy Center twice a week, teaching adults to read. I'm useful again, Charles. I matter to people. As I drove home from the cemetery, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't experienced in years. The money was gone, but I wasn't poor. The mansion and luxury cars were out of reach, but I wasn't suffering. I had exactly what I needed: enough resources to live independently, and the freedom to surround myself with people who appreciated me. That evening, as I prepared for bed in my cozy apartment, I thought about the test I'd given Monique that morning so many months ago. I'd asked for $100, hoping she would show me kindness and generosity. Instead, she'd shown me exactly who she really was. But in a strange way, I was grateful for her cruelty. If she had given me the money with a smile, I might have continued living in her house, accepting the scraps of affection she threw my way, convincing myself that her indifference was just her personality. I would have died slowly in that relationship, shrinking smaller and smaller until there was nothing left of the woman Charles had loved. Instead, her harsh words had awakened something in me I'd thought was lost forever: my sense of self-worth. She'd called me a bloodsucker, but in trying to wound me, she'd actually freed me. As I turned off the lights and settled into my comfortable bed, I smiled at the irony of it all. Monique thought she'd lost a fortune when I gave away Charles's money, but she'd actually lost something much more valuable: a mother who would have loved her unconditionally, supported her dreams, and been there for her through every joy and sorrow life brought her way. The money was gone, but I was still here, living my best life without her. And that, I realized, was the sweetest revenge of all. I closed my eyes and slept peacefully, surrounded by the quiet contentment of a woman who had finally learned to value herself. Tomorrow would bring new adventures, new friendships, new opportunities to matter in the world. And for the first time in years, I couldn't wait to see what life would bring. Now, I'm curious about you who listened to my story. What would you do if you were in my place? Have you ever been through something similar? Comment below. And meanwhile, I'm leaving on the final screen 2 other stories that are channel favorites, and they will definitely surprise you. Thank you for watching until here. And now, as this whole journey from a bright bank lobby back to a small, quiet apartment drifts away from you, let the sharp parts start to soften. The word leech in that spotless kitchen, the long line of zeros on the screen, the sound of a car door closing as a mother finally drives away for good, all of that can begin to blur now, like streetlights slipping past your window on a slow night ride. You've just spent time with a black mother who tested her own daughter with a simple question and discovered the truth was colder than she ever imagined. But you also watched her stand up, pack her suitcase, sign the papers, and build a life where she is wanted and respected instead of merely tolerated. Maybe there were moments when you felt that sting in your own chest, remembering times when you were helpful, generous, loving, and still treated like too much. You're allowed to keep the strength of her choice and gently set down some of the anger that came with it. If anyone has ever made you feel like you were taking up too much space, or like your needs were an inconvenience, let this settle over you like a soft blanket. You are not a burden. Wanting kindness is not selfish. Wanting respect is not dramatic. It simply means you remember that you are human and that you matter. So wherever you are right now, lying in bed, curled on the couch, or listening in the dark, notice how your body begins to let go. Let your shoulders drop a little. Unclench your jaw. Let your hands rest instead of brace. Let each breath come in slow and leave even slower, like waves sliding in and out on a quiet shore at night. You don't have to fix your family story tonight or decide who to call, what to forgive, or what to change. For these next few moments, your only job is to breathe and let your thoughts drift farther and farther away. Like a car easing down an empty road after midnight, let your heart hear this almost like a whisper. You are not too much. You are not too late. And you are not alone in how this feels. When your eyes are ready to close, let them. Let this story sink to the bottom of your mind like a smooth stone in deep, calm water. And as sleep moves towards you, rest in the quiet truth that you matter, just as you are, exactly where you are tonight.